Derek, thanks for getting together with us here at the Medtech conference show. And you are the founder and CTO of Spinal Singularity, right?
That's correct, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. So tell us about your story.
So, I previously served as a Marine Infantry and Special Operations Officer. I was a Marine Raider, and unfortunately got injured, suffered a spinal cord injury in Afghanistan in 2012. And when I came back, one of the things I had to deal with was intermittent catheterization to manage my bladder on a day-to-day basis, which basically required me to insert disposable one-time use catheters into my body every single time I needed to empty my bladder. And so when
How many times a day was that?
6, 7, 8, 10 times a day. And so when faced with that reality, as the current gold standard of care when I was 28 years old, thinking of doing that every day for the rest of my life was pretty daunting. And so after some challenges, just became obsessed with trying to solve the problem and create a better way, find a better solution. And so I started a company called Spinal Singularity in 2015. And since then we've been developing a product we call the Connected Catheter, which is a fully internal bladder management system that allows users to empty their bladder with the push of a button.
So why Spinal Singularity if it's a bladder management system?
Great question. So when I first started the company, I envisioned a suite of products to improve the quality of life for people with spinal cord injury. And what I've realized over the past 4 years is that all of our focus has been on one product because it takes a long time to create meaningful change in this industry. So I'm still hopeful that once we're successful with this product, that we'll be able to pursue other opportunities to improve people's quality of life with spinal cord injury. But we've been focused solely on this one product, and until we make it successful, we're not going to do anything else.
So where do we sit right now in clinicals, approval, things of that sort?
So we filed a technical file for review to our notified body so that we're able to commercialize the device abroad using the CE mark approval. And we're currently in a clinical study now, which will give us the data we need for FDA clearance. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to achieve that next year, depending upon how quickly we can enroll in this current clinical study.
So you went from serving our country, and thanks for that. And how did you move into a CTO role? Did you study engineering?
I studied engineering for my undergraduate degree at the Naval Academy. I'm not a professional engineer. I just started putting pen to paper and tried to move forward, building the company. The idea came to me while I was at business school at UCLA, so I went back to business school to learn about entrepreneurship and how to start a company. And fortunately, over time, was able to gain enough steam and momentum to find experienced medical device professionals that were willing to quit their jobs and come join us. And so I hired a CEO named Bill Colon, who's phenomenal. And then shortly thereafter, we hired professional engineers, which allowed me to focus on the things that I'm uniquely qualified to do, which is to how to help guide the strategy of the company, engage with patients, engage with clinicians, build the network that we have, and champion the cause.
Yeah. So where are you right now as far as financing, fundraising? What should the market be aware of?
We've been really fortunate to have the support of investors. So we have angel investors, venture capital funds, and a few family offices that have all contributed to support our company efforts. We've also been very successful, fortunately, in raising non-dilutive funding from the government. So we've received grants from both the National Institute of Health and from a congressionally directed medical research program. So we have the capital we need to reach our goal of commercializing, getting FDA clearance. At that point, we may need to raise more funds, depending upon how quickly we can do that. And then once we have that, we're going to continue to push forward and try to get the product out to as many people as quickly as possible. And so we'll look for distribution partners outside the US, and then try to conduct a limited launch here in the US to continue moving the product forward and getting as many people this device and hopefully improve their quality of life.
What has been the biggest challenge since you started this initiative?
Getting started was definitely the biggest challenge for me, especially because I had zero experience in the industry. And medical devices probably was the hardest possible industry I could choose to go into coming out of business school. There's so many different things that you have to be good at or do well. Everything from IP to clinical to regulatory. There's so many different nuanced, highly focused areas that you have to know. And so having zero experience in that, I'm really fortunate to be in business still today. But the only reason we are is because there's so many people that were willing to give me time and advise me and mentor me and help me out. And now we're well on the path to being successful if we can execute well.
Yeah. So tell me about the path from Afghanistan and what that journey was until you started your LLC or your company. What did that look like?
I got injured in June of 2012, so a little over 7 years ago. And prior to that injury, I had pledged my life to serving the country. I loved what I was doing. I loved the people I was working with, the missions that we were able to conduct as special operations personnel, as Marine Raiders, and I would have continued to do that for the rest of my life. And so it was a little bit of a shock after I'd gotten injured. I came back. I'd gone back to work in a staff role as a operations and plans officer, where I was able to help out the battalion. I was going to business school part-time because I didn't know how long that would last and what I wanted to do next with my life. And what I found was that the medical device industry offered me an opportunity to channel this into something positive, and that this was something else that I was uniquely positioned to do, and a problem that I was uniquely positioned to solve in the world. And so that offered me the same sort of passion and drive and motivation that I had when I was in the military. And so it was a long journey to get to where we are today, but through the recovery process, I had a lot of mentors, a lot of people, my family that was there to help me along the way, a lot of professors, a lot of people that were in my community and my network that were able to help me get to where we are today and successful startup.
What was the moment that you knew, I'm going to start a medical device company? So it just didn't creep up on you. I mean, you're a Marine, you're once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah.
Clearly an overachiever, And so what was that moment? Was it a cup of coffee? Was it in a car in a parking lot? Was it you swapping out a catheter? What was the moment?
Yeah, it started, I think the instant that it started was when I suffered a lot of complications with catheterization. I was having what's called false passage and strictures, which are a very common side effect of catheterizing yourself frequently. And I ended up going to a hospital at Camp Pendleton, Naval Hospital, and I was there in the urologist's office, and the doctor there was like, oh, we can't pass the catheter, so we're going to do this procedure called a suprapubic catheter. And I said, what's that? He said, oh, we're going to cut a small hole in your stomach and then stick a little tube in there, and then it'll drain your urine through your stomach. I said, time out, doc. It's 2014. It's got to be a better way. He said, no, that's it. We got 3 options: intermittent catheters, Foley catheters, and suprapubic catheters. And I'm like, it's a big deal. Like, I don't want to do. He's like, no, it's not a big deal. You could pull it out and we'll stitch you back up. You'll be good after a few months. You'll have a little scar. And I'm like, no way, absolutely not. And so luckily I didn't have to have that. But that moment, I became obsessed with trying to solve this problem and understanding why no one else had done it. And that was about a year before I graduated business school and was committed full-time to starting the venture. But while I was in business school, I was building the business plans, conducting market research, talking to experts in the field, and building the network for moving forward from there.
Tell me how the technology works. You had mentioned there's a higher tech side to it too, versus the, let's call it, archaic, barbaric approach. So what's unique about your tech?
So the key difference between our device and everything else that's out there is ours is fully internal to the body, and it's extended use. So it's fully internal, meaning nothing is hanging out of the body. There's no pathway for bacteria to enter your body, which is what happens with other catheters. And the extended use is that our device lasts for up to 7 days. So one of our catheters may be able to offset 50 disposable catheters. And so instead of putting 50 small pieces of plastic into your body, you stick one device into your body, and you can use a wireless remote controller to push a button and empty your bladder. And so it really, I think it restores, it makes you feel more normal, it's much more natural urination and bladder filling than catheter use. And so it's not a cure, it's not perfect, it's not a pill that you can just magically regain bladder function, but we think it's vastly superior to what's on the market today.
Is there you mentioned something really important, and it's starting to become more and more prevalent in Medtech, is how it makes the patient feel. So clinical data is certainly important, but more and more, last year's TCT, KOLs sat on the podium and said, more importantly, the patients feel better. And that's sort of a qualitative empirical approach, but gosh, it's so important. Do you use your device?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how important it is, how it makes you feel? Nobility.
Yeah,
right?
It's incredibly important. And so most people are fortunate not to know or have yet to know what it feels like to lose these types of routine bodily functions. But the second you do, the second that's taken from you, your life changes. Everything changes. Like dealing with catheterization, my life revolves around bladder management. I became obsessed with it because it had so many complications. It was the most challenging task I'd face on a day-to-day basis after I'd been injured. Not being in a wheelchair, not being able to walk again, using catheters. That was the hardest thing that I had to do after I was injured. And so any improvement in that, whether it's incremental or exponential, which we think our device is exponential improvements in quality of life, is truly meaningful for people. And at the end of the day, that's where a lot of the real innovation, I think, in this industry is headed, which is awesome because, there's been tons of incremental improvements with surgical tools for doctors and focusing on doctor this, doctor that, and that's very important. But we're now seeing a huge shift towards patient-focused outcomes and patient care, really improving quality of life for people, and that's something that we're very proud to try to do.
That's awesome. How does somebody find you, reach out to you? Where can they become a fan?
Yeah, we're on all the social media channels. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have a website. It's www.spinalsingularity.com. We also have a website for our product. It's www.connectedcatheter.com. And we're currently running a clinical study across the U.S. with over a dozen sites. There's links to the clinicaltrials.gov site there. And surprisingly or unsurprisingly, you probably know someone in your network who's an adult male who's using a catheter or has used a catheter in the past. And so if you know anybody that's interested, they can drop us a note, they can send feedback, they can send us messages, they can sign up for our clinical studies online, they can reach out to us. We're very easy to reach. It's not hard to track us down. We're based in Orange County, California, so anybody out there, our address is in Google Maps, they can find us, come say hi.
Cool. Well, thanks again for sharing the story.
Thank you.
And thanks
Pleasure's
for
all mine.
being one of the powerful stories in the medtech industry, which is amazing.
Thank you.